Hi, and welcome to Identity Crisis, a show from the Shalom Hartman Institute, creating better conversations about the essential issues facing Jewish life. I'm Claire Sufrin, Director of Research and Publication here at Hartman, and the editor of Sources, a journal of Jewish ideas. I'm stepping in for Yehuda to introduce today's episode. A few months ago, I invited 3 experts to record a conversation about the writers and readers of today's American Jewish literature. An edited version of that conversation appears in written form in the current issue of Sources, which you can find online at sourcesjournal.org. Today, I am excited to present that conversation as an episode of Identity Crisis. It's guided by Tali Rosenblatt-Cohen. She hosts the podcast, The 5 Books, Jewish Authors and the Books That Shaped Them. You'll also hear from Naomi Firestone-Teeter, CEO of Jewish Book Council, and Lauren Wein, editor-in-chief of Avid Reader Press, an imprint of Simon & Schuster. Together, they ask and start to answer, what does American Jewish literature tell us about what it means to be an American Jew? It's a fun and wide-ranging conversation that left me with a list of new books to read. I hope you enjoy it too. Here's Tali.
You both sit in these interesting vantage points, sitting between writers and readers and between the literary world and Jewish life. And American Jewish literature has long been like a running conversation about all kinds of things: identity, belonging, assimilation, family, faith, God, all of those things, what it means to live as a Jew in whatever particular historical moment. And this moment feels particularly charged. And I think the questions around Jewish identity and public Jewishness and Zionism representation, the limits of the big tent, all of those things have become newly urgent and maybe sometimes fraught. And at the same time, there's this extraordinary growth in every direction of Jewish books across genres. So I'm just excited to think together with you about what kinds of questions are writers asking, what are readers hungry for, and what are the kinds of stories that are not being told. So just as a starting point, if you could share what you think in American Jewish literature today, what feels most alive or urgent right now?
From my vantage point, there is such variety in what I'm hearing from writers in terms of the stories that they want to write. And it's more about their concern about not having a place to find their readers at the end of the day. But I think even the fact that there is this burning desire to write in this time, for me, is incredibly exciting. People are not necessarily shutting themselves down and kind of retreating to their corners. They do want to tell their stories. They do want to make sure that their ideas have a place in this world. And I'll just use one quick example. I remember writing to authors after October 7th and saying that JBC was creating a platform, this is within 2 days, to continue to platform Israeli writers in particular. And we heard back from many of them who were appreciative that we reached out, but how could they possibly write right now? They were, in a bunker with their children, and they were trying to make sense of all the kind of chaos around them. And within 24 hours, the pieces started coming in, that they felt like this is actually exactly what they needed to do. They needed to make sure that they were creating testimony, that they were making sure that the moment was being documented and archived, and that there were readers across the world, in America and beyond, who were engaging with what Jews were experiencing at that time. And I think that's reflective beyond Israel as well, that there is this urgency to be able to write and connect.
I remember a friend telling me that she was pregnant in October 2001. And I thought, oh my God, when you got pregnant, it was before 9/11. Like, the whole world has changed. When you got pregnant, it was one world, and now it's another world. Like, the world you're bringing your child into is different than the one you thought you were bringing him into. I had kind of a similar experience that way. Long before October 7th, I had all these books signed up that were very much about Jewish life and different histories, different approaches, different lenses. So I think it's a cycle in Jewish culture and Jewish literature. There are times where we have to face in, and there's times that we can face out. And I feel like that sort of happened in the last couple of years.
I'm thinking about Benjamin Resnick's Next Stop.
It was submitted before. It was submitted a week before, and it was in my inbox. And this is Benjamin Resnick's Next Stop. And when I read the description, I thought, oh, God, I don't want to read a book about Israel being disappeared and then what happens to the Jews afterwards. That sounds so dark. And then on October 8th, I thought, this story that's happening right now, this terrible thing that's happening right now, I think it's in my inbox. Then I read it and it felt so eerie and uncanny that I felt compelled to publish it just because it was a way that I can engage with what was happening in the world in my work and in literature, which is what I always want to engage with, what's happening in the world in a literary way and not in other ways. And it kind of helped me do that. But that's a book that is hard to share outward. I think people outside of the Jewish community don't quite know what to make of it or what to do with it. I mean, I had a friend who I had given the book to, and she said, I'm so sorry. I put the book in my freezer. Like, I can't have it near me. It feels like radioactive. At some point I'll come back to it, but I can't right now. So I thought that was like, giving it a gold star, kind of. It was that powerful.
I was going to say, I think that's like the best of what books can do is pull out what's going on in the world. So I wonder if we could just go back to, where do you find the continuity with the history of American Jewish literature?
I'm thinking about books that have really touched me, in particular in the last, let's say, year. A lot of them have been about memory and intergenerational families and life and kind of the frictions and fractions and evolutions and all the things that make up being and being a Jew, as well as books that are exploring kind of global Jewry and the different kind of immigration and migration and how Jewishness appears in different families at different points and how people keep kind of coming back around to the same questions and they keep coming back to their Jewishness. They can't shake it. It's there. And I feel like for me, this is what I was interested in before October 7th and what I was seeing, and we were all seeing it just in the canon, and, continues to be true today, even if the specifics that they're navigating are particular to maybe this exact moment in time.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, I took a class in college, American Jewish Literature, and we read Philip Roth and Saul Bellow and sort of the classics that people think of American Jewish literature. When you think of those writers, and that's just from a particular time period, I mean, there were writers before, but where do you see the through line to now?
So my daughter, I just recommended that she read American Pastoral, and she did. And we just had a long conversation about it last night. And I was explaining to her how kind of controversial he was at the time. And she kind of couldn't really understand it. But I said, well, you didn't read like Portnoy's Complaint or Goodbye Columbus. I tried to explain to her it was so problematic that Jewish readers were just like, how could you portray us like this? How could you betray us? And I've always kind of loved that he just kind of took it on. I love that Jewish instinct to kind of like look at something from all angles and like not necessarily worry about how it is perceived. But I was just thinking about Long Island Compromise, Taffy Brodesser Akner's most recent novel, which I really do think is in lineage of American Pastoral. And I loved reading that book because I loved how it showed trauma through the generations, but also just culture through the generations. And it's so funny. And I actually really felt like I understood something new about myself and about like Jewish literature and what it could do. The central drama of that novel, I don't necessarily need to recount it, but like the patriarch of a very wealthy family is kidnapped and ransomed, basically. And it's about how that trauma kind of reverberates through his family. But basically, everybody tells him like, okay, this happened to your body. It didn't happen to you. It happened to your body. Like, just get over it. And I realized that his kids are completely traumatized. And I remember saying to Taffy, we did an event, and I said, it's like, this is exactly inherited trauma. It's like it happened to his body and people are saying it didn't happen to you. And for the kids, it didn't happen to their body, but it did happen to them, because when you reject something or deny it, it keeps going. I just think that humor and that trauma and all of it, like that is so much a part of Jewish literature. It's so much what I'm drawn to, like the good and the bad, the life force and the death drive, all of it.
What do you think, Naomi?
A book that I've mentioned in Hesefort when I talk about Jewish Book Council that has just really stuck with me over the years is Rebecca Goldstein's Mind Body Problem. And I think the reason is, there are many reasons. It's, she's brilliant. It's a brilliant book. I just keep thinking of like Jew for myself versus Jew for Jew in public, Jew out there in the world. And, for me, that kind of gets at some of the truth that Lauren was talking about. And it's something that I've never felt so sharp as I have in the last few years. But I think I myself hadn't wrestled with it as urgently. Like, it's always something I thought about and was interesting to me. And this is something that, like, I've intellectually considered, and, it made its way into, like, different parts of my life. But now it feels like life or death, both in terms of, like, the physical state, but also in terms of, like, life and death of my Jewishness. And every book I'm reading is, like, reshaping it and rethinking it and, like, giving me power and then making me retreat and giving me confidence. And then, like, oh my God, how am I over here?
It's something I've been thinking about, all of these books where it feels like people going back to their grandparents, telling their grandparents' stories, finding their way into their grandparents' histories. I'm thinking of, like, Jordan Salama, Stranger in the Desert.
I remember when it felt new, honestly, was like Jonathan Safran Foer's Everything is Illuminated. And I felt like that, I guess maybe because I'm third generation and I've been thinking about the Holocaust survivor, I've been thinking about these things my entire life. And I felt like when I read that book, it felt like, okay, you can tell this story in a way that is really fresh and different and kind of risky.
I guess I'm wondering for both of you, do you feel like writers feel more pressure now, or do you think they feel more freedom in how they depict Jewishness on the page?
I think there's a new layer of self-consciousness that might have faded a bit. I think there was a little bit of an assumption that it was just like, this is a totally fine, okay, great thing to explore and confront. And now I think there's a level of self-consciousness, like, what am I saying? Who am I saying this to? Who's going to be reading this? Who's listening? Like, that kind of thing.
And in your role, how are you directing writers, or, like, what's your advice?
I never, ever, ever tell a writer what to do or what not to do. But I will be realistic about, there are people who will go near it and there are people who won't, just because they don't understand. And they're like, oh, this might be problematic. I don't really know. So I'm just going to, like, steer clear of it. I think there's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Naomi, what are you seeing in terms of the pressure or freedom of how people are depicting Jewishness?
I have some writers who are like, let me have edit. Like, I am empowered by this moment. I am empowered to say all the things I've always wanted to say, but maybe censored myself before. And now I feel this, like, responsibility to tell this story. And others who are, really guarded and self-conscious and wondering if you should maybe take out that character or change that setting, or maybe put that book to the side right now because there's a different book that might do better in terms of the market, the business side, the industry, part of publishing. In conversations I have, even for those who are feeling most confident, you can't avoid this conversation of, like, how are you going to ultimately find your readers? How are you going to ensure that your story has the platform, it needs, regardless of how kind of comfortable you feel writing Jewishness. And I think that's where not to, like, plug JBC here, but this is where I think, I feel a lot of urgency around the work that we're doing at this organization. It's an organization that goes back 100 years. It's been through many different iterations and challenges in American Jewish life. I think the pipeline needs to continue. Jews are big readers. We're not always reading Jewish books. But if this is something that really we're all wrestling with, then books are a critical vehicle to engage in this. And, I want to continue to be that platform for them.
When you think of a Jewish book, what do you think of as makes a book a Jewish book?
People are always asking me, what is a Jewish book? Does it have to have Jewish themes? Does it have to, be a Jewish author? Like, what does it mean? And I used to think I would figure that out the longer I was at Jewish Book Council, and I've been at Jewish Book Council for 20 years. And newsflash, I have not, or PSA, I have not figured it out. I think that all the books that come through this organization, people who want to be in the Jewish community and talk about their Jewishness or talk about the Jewish themes of their book or speak to a Jewish audience, I think all of these kind of fit into the mosaic of what Jewish literature and the Jewish literary landscape is.
A friend of mine told me this quote after I was having a lot of trouble trying to locate myself in the last couple of years in all of this. And he quoted, I think his name is Michael Walzer, who says, like, you have to be a connected critic. Because I was kind of like, I want to distance myself from all of this. It's too hard. I can't do this. And he was like, you can't. You can grapple with it. You have to be a connected critic. And what I realized was that sometimes I feel more connected to the Jewish world, and sometimes I feel more critical of it. And I mean, I think the books that I am drawn to also kind of vacillate between those things, loving and embracing and celebrating, all aspects of Jewish culture and in literature is amazing. And I also think there's a lot to wrestle with and struggle with and criticize. And so I think Jewish books do all of those things.
From your vantage point as a publisher, like what makes a book a Jewish book? And does that have to do more with who the reader is going to be or what the book is?
I'm going to use as an example a book called 100 Saturdays by Michael Frank, which I think you've both read, right? So I read this. This was a proposal that I remember reading it during like the heart of lockdown. I was totally dead to the world. I couldn't read anything. And then I read this proposal and I was like, this is a story I've never heard before. Jews of Rhodes, what? This lady, this friendship, this is fascinating. And I thought, okay, this is going to be for Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews. Like I have my audience. I know who the readership is going to be. And then I was amazed that when I launched it, all these people on my sales force, not Jewish at all, were like, I love this book. I can't wait to sell this book to all of our customers or whatever. And I was so pleasantly surprised that the audience from the beginning, it went so far beyond.
What do you think it was about that book?
I think it really brought to life a culture that people hadn't necessarily encountered before. And it made people think about their own cultures and their own histories and the people in their own lives. I think it was really like a way in to other things. And it was just very beautifully done. But that was an example. I mean, that's definitely a very Jewish book to me, but it's not only a Jewish book.
I think there's something so optimistic about that book.
I agree.
And it's like, okay, there's obviously the Holocaust component in the Spanish world. And yet we're always kind of craving that. Like, where can we kind of, understand the history and the trauma and all the things that happened around, these kind of world events. But to leave it feeling that dose of inspiration and optimism is just, I don't know, helps you put one foot ahead of the other again.
I'm wondering what you think the limits are of a book that's a Jewish book that's just not going to appeal to a wider audience.
I think we've all read the book Sisters of Fortune by Esther Levy Chehabar. But I love that book. And it resonated so much for me because I have a whole side of my family who's Syrian Jews from Brooklyn. And so it really brought that to life. And it really gave me so much context for their world that I was sort of tangentially connected to, but never quite understood from the inside. Now, if you never had met a Syrian Jew in your life and had never been to Flatbush, I don't think it would resonate in the same way, but could you have access to it? Yes, right? I think it would just be an introduction to a totally new culture for you. It's hard for me to gauge how much of it is inside baseball, how much of the humor lands. I don't know.
What are the limitations on what would make a Jewish book inaccessible to a wider community?
You're not going to get the complete book. You're not going to get the full experience. And maybe part of the experience is enough to really,
I feel that way when I'm reading books about other cultures too. That I'm getting so much, and I'm sure that for someone else they're reading it in a totally different way. Yeah. We started to talk about this, but I wanted to talk about the last 2.5 years post October 7th. Naomi spoke so beautifully starting off just about, feeling this deep need to connect readers and writers. I wonder how you think about how it's impacted how you view your mission at the Jewish Book Council, but also just how you feel about getting books into readers' hands.
For me, this sharpens the mission and makes it more urgent. It's a Jewish literary ecosystem holder that is there to keep it all in balance, to ensure authors can write, that publishers can publish, that readers can discover new books, and that communities and individuals can create conversations. And over the last, 100-ish years of our existence, I feel like, different pieces of this have had different proportions of our activities at Jewish Book Council and our bandwidth. And, that's shifted over time to make sure the community is supported and to ensure place for Jewish books and ideas to thrive. And so for me, this has meant that we've had to deepen our engagement within the industry itself. This has lit a fire under our need to expand our readership, educate our readership, ensure they're going along for the ride with us, create more portals into Jewish life. There are people who are engaged with Jewish community and life who, this is a natural piece of it for them. But I also have many people in my life who are really not engaged with Jewish community and life and are newly activated and interested, and they are looking for a way in, and that way in is literature, culture. Those are the conversations that are charging them, are giving them kind of the tools they need to be navigating this moment and also think about their Jewish life beyond this moment. And I think it's an opportunity for us to be more visible and direct with them about why our work matters.
I always see my mission as publishing books that I believe should cut through the noise. So I don't have to agree with every single thing in a book that I publish, but I do have to believe that it is worth becoming a big part of the conversation. But the noise has changed. So I guess the nature of the noise has changed. So the things that cut through also change.
Just to pick up on that and to identify that noise, what do you think the expectations right now that Jewish writers either be explicitly Zionist or anti-Zionist, how do you think that's affecting what's being written and what's being published?
I do feel like there's been a siloing effect in recent years. That's much of the noise right now, is that people are very much speaking in their own echo chambers. And the Zionist, anti-Zionist, the fact that there's like zero dialogue that can happen around that. And I think that's really problematic in the Jewish community. That's hugely problematic.
Do you feel like it's impacting what's being written?
It's interesting. There's a lot of, kind of noise in these two kind of, I'm this writer or that writer. And I kind of want to reject that. We have so many writers I'm talking to who, like the majority of writers I'm talking to, who are just writing their books. And there's Israel, and there's complicated feelings about Israel, and there's very proud feelings about Israel, and there's criticism of Israel, and there's pride in American Jewish life and criticism of American Jewish life and everything in between. And these books, as we talked at the beginning, so many of them are that I've been loving in particular, are intergenerational and over different centuries, in fact, around some of the same families or communities. And it's all going in and out of the same messy conversation. And I'm continuing to see writers, at least who are working with us, who are in that space and wrestling with all of it all at once and are not letting themselves be limited by, or maybe not using, or maybe they are using these terms, in different kinds of ways, but they mean different things to different people. And I think for a lot of writers, they're starting to understand that, and they want to kind of keep their head down and write what they want to write, messiness and all.
What are the kinds of stories that you guys feel like are still missing or underexplored in American Jewish literature?
This is the kind of thing, like, I know it when I see it, but I don't know it until I see it.
Lauren, I feel the same way. I think actually 100 Saturdays is a great example. A book we didn't know we were missing and we absolutely needed. And I wouldn't have known we were missing it until you published it, Lauren. And then I needed it. I bought it for everyone and gave it to everyone. I can't stop recommending it to people. And I can't imagine a world in which that story doesn't exist. And I feel like this is why I'm so grateful to writers too, for telling me what I need to know and continuing to kind of expand my thinking about Jewish life and the world at large and humanity.
I mean, look, I have my dark days, but for the most part, I think everything is cyclical. It's one thing we know as Jews. We have our hard times and our very devastatingly dark times, and then we have our bright times. It's just how it is. And there are hard parts now, and we also have a lot of opportunities. Like Naomi, the seats that we're in, there's a lot we can do and we try to do. I do think that the waves between the connection and critical and whatever, I just think those are going to keep happening, and we just need to do our part.
To end and to pick up on some of the things that we've been talking about, how would you articulate the value of Jewish books, both for the Jewish reader and for the world of literature?
I think it goes back to what Lauren was just saying about the cyclical nature of Jewish life and history and storytelling. I feel like this is just an inherent part of our tradition in terms of how we think about Jewish text and commentary and Jewish ideas. And we're playing the long game here as Jews. So we have a lot of experience with this and telling story and telling history and thinking about how Jewishness informs daily life and what conversations were in conversation with, that may have happened 1,000 years ago in Jewish text. And I think that's just so powerful. And for me, I turn to the books to make sense of it all. There is something comforting, even in like the darkest point of the cycle, where it just is going to keep being in conversation.
At the risk of sounding really grandiose, I think about the Jews were given the Torah in the Torah. Like the story, it was happening.
We're so meta.
It's so meta. And like we're living the story and we're telling the story at the same time.
I think that's so beautifully put. I think that's what we were starting to say about 100 Saturdays as well, is that feeling of like bringing back a world to you that felt it would have been entirely lost until someone writes it. And books are they're a meeting place and conversations that you couldn't have or people that you couldn't meet. So thank you both for sharing.
Amen.
Today.
Amen too.
Here are some other things that are happening at the Shalom Hartman Institute. College students, please join us this December in Atlanta. The Edward Fine Winter Student Seminar brings together Jewish student leaders from across North America for 4 days of big ideas, deep learning, and meaningful conversation. This year's theme is Jewish flourishing in the diaspora. Together, we'll explore what it takes for Jewish communities to thrive in North America today through conversations about identity, responsibility, civic life, and Jewish peoplehood. We'll also consider how deep connections to Israel and the global Jewish community strengthen Jewish flourishing. Space is limited. Apply now at the link in the show notes. And this week, Senior Kogod Fellow James Leffler is publishing his new book, Exceptional Hatred: Anti-Semitism and the Fight Over Free Speech in Modern America. This book studies legal cases about anti-Semitism and free speech, and it imagines how we might fight anti-Semitism without undermining freedom and equality. Congratulations, Jim. We can't wait to read it. Thanks for listening to our show, and special thanks to our guests, Tali Rosenblatt-Cohen, Naomi Firestone-Teeter, and Lauren Wine. Identity Crisis is produced by me, Michelle Siegel. This episode was edited by Josh Allen. The theme music is by So Called. Transcripts are available on our website, typically a week after an episode airs. We're always looking for ideas for what we should cover on future episodes. So if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, or if you have comments about this one, please write to us at identitycrisis@shalomhartman.org. For more ideas from the Shalom Hartman Institute about what's unfolding right now, sign up for our newsletter in the show notes and subscribe to this podcast wherever podcasts are available. Thanks for listening.